here. We got Kyle Hutchins, who we actually saw at the beginning of the day. He's sitting at 5-0 playing Rug Delver. He's against Braun-Duin. Blue-White Miracles, BBD sitting at 5-0, has himself in play on a batter skull and up a game right now as well.
Yeah, great start. I got to watch him play his Esper deck in Standard against a Jund Monsters opponent, win a really close 3-game match towards the end of the round, right while I was on break here. Now 5-0 and looks to be in commanding position here against Rug Delver.
BBD's deck list a little bit different from Lisette's, of course. You'll normally see the R up there for red in Lisette's deck list, but Brian is just playing blue-white, so no main deck blast, as it were. He's got a Singleton Preordain. He has a Council's Judgment in his main deck as creatures, 3 Vendilion Click, 2 Stoneforge Mystic. We, of course, know at this point that Joe, not a Stoneforge Mystic kind of guy. No equipment either as well. So Brian's take a little bit different. Sometimes we see Thopter's Sword, sometimes we don't. So Hutchins just playing a pretty normal deck.
Yeah, looking over his Rug Delver list, nothing too fancy here. 4 main deck copies of Stifle. Sometimes you see that, sometimes you don't. Couple Spell Pierces, couple Cataxian Pros, 2 main deck Spell Snares. These decks have some what you would describe as flex slots. Kyle's using some of them on Spell Snare, but otherwise a pretty stock list.
Crows Grip going to take down that Batter Skull right now, so get that off the table. BBD, of course, going to come in with Stoneforge Mystic just for 1 point of damage. Now, taking a look at Brian's sideboard here, and it looks like he may have cowered it out a little bit. You see he's going to cast Stoneforge Mystic, but before he had submitted his deck, he said, I'm thinking about playing a Foil Squire in my sideboard.
Ooh.
And I'm taking a look at the 15. Boo.
Listen, he can say whatever he wants, joking around, acting like he's going to do stuff like that. Brian's here to win the tournament.
Yeah,
he's not using his sideboard slot that way.
He said he would have liked to reveal it blind off of counterbalance to counter something.
Yeah. Stoneforge Mystic number 5.
Yes, as it were.
The Squire.
It even has a lot of text, too. It has a story to tell, however, not ability. Hutchins going to tap 2 mana here. This is a copy of Tarmogoyf.
And Brian with a copy of Rest in Peace in his hand, which is a real haymaker against Rug Delver. You associate that card primarily with beating certain decks like Dredge and Reanimator, but Rug Delver is really hard to function without access to its graveyard because 8 of its 12 creatures are Tarmogoyf and Nimble Mongoose, which rely very heavily on the graveyard.
You see both players checking the graveyard. It is going to be a 4/5. We do have our handy dandy Tarmogoyf die, so everybody at home can see exactly how large that Lurgoyf is, as BBD will untap and take a draw here. Again, his Batter Skull has been dispatched by Crows Grip, so just a Stoneforge Mystic in play. Stoneforge Mystic, the second one, was countered, and now Brian's going to deploy a Rest in Peace.
And these kind of cards are huge wins for Brian because if they get forced to willed, that's a success, and if they don't, that's fine too. It's not a critical piece, but it's something that's worthy of force of will. And there's only so many of these kind of cards you can present against Rug Delver before they run out of the ability to contest things.
And it looks like Rest in Peace is going to bite the dust here. Tarmogoyf's going to grow a little bit, do an enchantment being in the graveyard. But as you can see in Brian's hand, he does have a Source of Plowshares to take care of that thing right now, too. So, you know, the Lurgoyf, while it is big, it can't be handled. It looks like Brian says, yeah, I'm going to get that off the table right now.
When you get Rug Delver into this kind of position where they're out of resources, no real pressure in play, it is an eminently beatable deck. So Kyle's got his work cut out for him here. He's down to just a Vendilion Click. Not a lot of ways in his deck left to win the game and not a lot of high impact draws.
Looks like it is time for that Vendilion Click in just a moment here. You see Tarmogoyf will be exiled from the Source of Plowshares. Not in the graveyard. That is important, of course. Now, Hutchins was thinking about playing a main phase Vendilion Click. Not sure if that's going to be the case, but it looks like it will be. It looks like he's going to target himself. Doesn't want that Daze. Brian does get to see that card, of course. It is a Daze. So that's going to go to the bottom. A mystery card coming here for Hutchins. Daze no longer good for this game.
No, that ship has sailed. And Click, of course, you have to reveal because it says non-land, so you need to confirm whether or not there's a land there.
Brian going to draw a card for the turn. It looks like he may have picked up his Singleton copy of Preordain. Now, let's not forget either, at the end of day 1 of the Invitational, our last one, season 1 in Charlotte, this man on the left was 8-0.
Yeah.
Actually started off 10-0. And then it all came crumbling down.
It was after he had already had the lock on the season 1 point invite as well.
Yes.
So potentially an incredible weekend for Brian where he could have won the Invitational and had already locked up the Players' Championship before then, but had a really rough second day and ended up finishing well outside the top 8.
Preordain will resolve. Stoneforge Mystic will come into the red zone. And then Click no interest in trading with that creature. Braun-Duin looking at a Vendilion Click of his own. Looks like he may want to get the information right now.
I wouldn't be surprised here if you see Brian check to see if the coast is clear. He actually may click himself because he has a terminus in his hand he's not that interested in, and just pyroblast the Vendilion click right now.
Get the beatdowns on. Looks like he's going to slow up a little bit, maybe. Looks like he's a little unsure of himself.
He may want to take a look at Kyle's hand here, just make sure there's no daze or card of significance.
Take a look, Skipoo. It's Tarmogoyf. That one could be relevant depending on Brian's hand.
I wouldn't be surprised if Brian put this on the bottom. Yes, you give some amount of risk here of Brian, or Kyle rather, excuse me, drawing a daze, but I think it's worth the risk.
Hutchins' card is a mystery at this point. Looks like it may have been a Wooded Foothills. Braun-Duin will just pass the turn back over to Hutchins, who draws a copy of Force of Will. Looks like he wanted to play that Wooded Foothills, and now he will. So the Force of Will, as good as a card as that is not good right now.
And Brian, you know, he doesn't even have to Pyroblast on his turn or Kyle's turn. He can simply wait and untap and draw. He's the one who's favored in a damage race right now, oddly enough.
Yeah, Brian says, I'm perfectly fine with that trade. Let's make that trade. And that's exactly what does happen. So Stoneforge Mystic will come across, and in the draw step of Kyle Hutchins, Braun-Duin will cast Vendilion Click yet again. Now Hutchins' draw was a Brainstorm. And Hutchins is reaching for that Brainstorm he'd like to cast. I wouldn't be surprised to see Brian counter this, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
Seems like a good spot to pick a fight here.
Your Brainstorm? I don't think so. And BBD says, let me take a look at that Force of Will. He says, you can absolutely keep that. You've already drawn your card for the turn. So Hutchins will pass the turn back over to Braun-Duin, who will untap those lands and take a draw here. Looks like it may have been a copy of Volcanic Island. Now he's going to follow up with a Brainstorm.
Brian has all the tools that he needs to win the game in play already. No need for him to fight over that Force of Will.
Stoneforge Mystic, Stoneforge Mystic, Brainstorm, and Counterbalance are the three cards that are drawn. So we'll put a couple back, has the fetch land in play to make it a perfect Brainstorm, along with Stoneforge Mystic as well, to search up any more equipment that he may have in his deck.
And this is just too much for Kyle to overcome at this point. His resources are exhausted. He's behind in the damage race. If he draws, even if he draws running removal spells, he's not favored long term because Brian has more powerful draws in the deck. And he needs to draw a bunch of removal spells in a row to just keep up with the board.
Also, Brian's life total is 21.
Oh yeah, he's also at 21.
Let's not forget about that either.
This is a very common element of BBD Miracle decks or Stoneforge decks. He regularly has a second copy of Batterskull in the sideboard for games that get drawn out, and he's getting paid off for it right here.
I actually like that aspect of his deck building too, because one of the things that I've noticed just watching decks with Batterskull is that players, they don't struggle to take care of the first one, but once they take care of the first one, they're like, okay, cool, that's over with. Let's play a different part of the game now. But Brian can create that sub-game again.
Yeah, and when the games go long, your Stoneforge Mystics regularly just diminish in value as the game progresses. Once the first Batterskull's been dealt with, they become, in fact, bad draws. Having the backup Batterskull is awesome because you get to, you know, play a second copy in the games that are drawn out, and you can also just randomly draw a Batterskull in a long game.
A daze was the draw from Kyle Hutchins, along with that Force of Will. Those are not going to help. And Brian Braun-Duin is now 6-0. Blue-White Miracles taking down Rug Delver.
Very impressive, and a matchup that feels pretty solid for me for the Blue-White Miracle player. It's just, as long as the first 2 turns or so aren't that disastrous for you, a fetch land gets stifled, a critical spell gets dazed. If you're able to just make your land drops, you have the tools to just exhaust all of their resources. And cards like Rest in Peace are such an important part of the equation because it's just another thing that you bring in that forces a Force of Will, basically, or some sort of removal spell. And all you need to do is play enough cards that they need to answer on time, and you just run them out of resources that way. And along the way, you know, you're Swords to Plow sharing certain creatures, or you're sweeping up a Terminus or whatever. So as long as you're able to present Haymaker after Haymaker, it's hard for them to keep up.
Yeah, it's just too much for them to overcome. I mean, we just watched that game there where Hutchins was behind. And also the other thing, too, is that outside of, you know, them being at a low life total, and firing a couple bolts or maybe pondering or brainstorming for bolts, when you get in that mid-game and BBD sitting at, you know, so he was sitting at 21, but let's say it's even like 12.
Yeah.
That's almost too much to overcome.
There's no coming back.